I want to bring in my guest, though, the man of the hour, Mark Sleboda, international relations and security analyst, a good friend of the show, and a lot to talk about today. How you doing, Mark? You doing all right?
Jamarl, thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show.
Mark, it is always an honor and a pleasure to have you. Mark, I think that there are deep politics at work. Deep politics. What I mean by that is, so
rather than shallow politics, because
rather than shallow politics, right?
Never really shallow, right?
So Trump reworks the deal. He works the mineral deal, and that deal is so onerous, it gets worse, right? Where he is effectively saying, "Look, we want everything to come out of Ukraine until the debt is paid off." And so all of the money that Joe Biden gave is now a debt that needs to be repaid back with interest.
Yeah.
America would get controlling interest or controlling decision in regards to what they explore and the money that comes back from them. And as Medvedev pointed out, Zelensky would be hung and everybody with him if he signed that deal. And even Ukrainian officials are like, this would never pass. We can't do this. Now, I guess my question is, does Trump know that he can't do this and made that deal specifically because he knows Zelensky can't sign it? Now, just add something else. Zelensky comes out and says, look, I'm not going to play the video because it's not in English, but Zelensky effectively says, look, we're not doing it. I'm not signing that deal. And not just not signing that deal, I am not accepting that this is a debt. This is something that you gave. This is not accepted as a debt. He then follows it up with pointing out that, by the way, I am also working with the Europeans in a way that I'm not necessarily going to tell you how I'm working with them, but I'm working with the Europeans in lieu of leverage, I suppose, just in case America pulls out. Interesting, another article comes out, and I know I'm putting out a lot, I'm sorry. Another article comes out where they point out Zelensky went to the Italian, a former Italian prime minister, and effectively said, hey, I am very doubtful of America right now, and I don't think Europe can carry the burden. So could you please go to Brazil and China and ask them for their support? Brazil, Lula, effectively slammed the door, kicked him out. Said, this is not my issue. You and America provoked this, you deal with it. China was more amicable, but effectively the same thing of, it's interesting that you come. You're the first person to come to ask us about this. But effectively, no. We're allies. We're not doing it. Trump comes out as boisterous as ever. And by the way, this is Medvedev, because I still think Medvedev is Putin whisperer. Medvedev says this, which I think is true. The American rolled out an excellent draft commodity deal for Kiev Freak. If Kiev regime approves it, the drug addict and company will be hanged in Maidan like Mussolini. And if he rejects it, the United States will reset Bandera regime. Checkmate. Effectively, I put out a deal that you in no way could possibly sign. Trump comes out as boisterous as ever and says this.
The rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth. And now he's saying, well, I want to renegotiate the deal. He wants to be a member of NATO. Well, he was never going to be a member of NATO. He understands that. So if he's looking to renegotiate the deal, he's got big problems. Zelensky, by the way, I see.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Mark, I threw a lot at you. I think all of that stuff is related to each other. First question, did Trump put out a deal knowing full well that Zelensky could not accept that deal?
Yeah. So first of all, it has to be said that right off the bat, well, it's not actually Zelensky. There was no deal, right? I mean, not that, maybe the broad outlines of there should be a deal was agreed upon, but the actual terms of the deal have never been agreed upon and signed. Right. And it's actually the U.S. that is continually changing the terms of the deal and evidently making it worse, progressively worse, and more punitive every time Zelensky hesitates and it doesn't get signed, right? So, or whatever happened with the fracas in the White House and so on. And evidently, they don't even want Zelensky to sign it because they're as worried about the legality of that. Although they won't say it as anyone else, it would be signed by one of his ministers. But so it actually goes a lot worse than what you are describing, right? Because it is not until the debt of all the quote unquote debt of all the U.S. aid, and Trump claims it's much bigger, which is very interesting because it may give us an insight of how much greater U.S. support has been than publicly revealed to the Kiev regime. He says
Trump
it's
said
some
$300 billion.
billion dollars, right? Which is more than double what most estimates are, right? So he keeps repeating that number, right? So he's very insistent on it. He says, I don't care if Biden gave it to you, I want it back, right? And that's what this deal is about. And Zelensky's perfectly right here, right? I mean, Donald Trump is acting like a mafia don, right? And I don't think I've ever said those words, that Zelensky is perfectly right, before, right?
No, he is.
Yeah, I mean, it was given, and now for Trump to be demanding it back, right? That is, obviously not something that the Kiev regime can accept, nor I believe is it meant to accept, right?
Exactly.
So it's not just a mineral resources deal. It's a deal on anything of any value that makes money in Ukraine, public or private. Infrastructure, ports, energy, mineral, anything, right? Then all of the proceeds from that go into a fund that the U.S. would have a controlling share of, and basically the U.S. decides to get what they get out of it. And it's not until the debt is paid off, it's indefinite, it's forever, right? So, I mean, the deal is not, and it's not just actually the stuff that's built now. It's any infrastructure of anything value built in Ukraine into the future as well, right? So it's the U.S. in this most. I don't know if there has ever been an imperialist, colonialist diktat more severe than what we're seeing now. I mean, forget the potato famine. I mean, this is beyond that. I mean, this is beyond anything. It's Trump basically saying to every Ukrainian, give me your firstborn child and your second-born child. And if you have any children after that who manage to have children, then their first and second children are mine too, and so on down the generations until Ukraine doesn't exist anymore, right? That is the nature of this deal. There's absolutely no way that Zelensky, I mean, it would literally be selling his country into complete colonial servitude and bondage for nothing guaranteed, nothing, some vague thing that, oh, well, if the U.S. is that intimately involved in controlling all of Ukraine's economy, then we kind of have, it's kind of an amorphous security guarantee, because obviously we would want to keep the money spigot flowing once we've, driven it literally into Ukraine's heart and the blood keeps spilling out, right? I mean, that's what we're talking here, right? I mean, that's why Medvedev is even like, no one's going to sign this thing. So yes, I believe it that right now that it is intentionally made so punitive that they're probably laughing in the White House. Do you think he'll sign it? No, he's not going to sign it. He's not going to take it, right? They're probably laughing about it, right? It is obviously intended for Zelensky to say no and to allow Trump to take another step back from the Kiev regime. I can't imagine. Now, that said, that is an analysis on a logical basis, right?
He can't expect them to sign that deal.
No, but I mean that assumption, that analysis that Trump doesn't mean him to sign the deal is based on logic. And I'm not so sure that the Trump administration is operating on logic in any situation anywhere, right, at this point. So I don't know. I don't know 100% that that's what's going on here, because Trump is, at the same time, he is now threatening Russia, openly for the first time, saying if he doesn't get his ceasefire, and if he believes that Russia is responsible for him not getting his ceasefire, then he is going to tax all Russian oil with secondary tariffs, which means he will tariff any country that dares buy oil from Russia. And Russia is the largest exporter of oil, back and forth with Saudi Arabia. Anyway, it's impossible. It is a threat without teeth, right? Right. Because it would crash the global oil market. It would send oil prices so high. Americans, Trump is love of talking about how huge things will be. Yeah. The inflation and the price of gasoline in your tanks will be huge if that happened, right? So, I mean, and it's gone further, because now he's threatening tariffs against the whole world. He said today, just the last few hours, all the countries. He's going to put tariffs on everyone. Tariffs for everyone. He doesn't like sanctions. He doesn't like that word. But William McKinley was a big fan of tariffs. So Trump thinks that everyone in the world, tariffs for everyone, right? I mean, not facetiously, not rhetorically. He said all the countries. So he might be a little unhinged at this point. And he's starting to sound unhinged, to be perfectly honest, right? Between Greenland and his back and forth on Russia. Now, he evidently, in an interview with NBC, he said that he was extremely pissed at Putin for bringing up the idea that Zelensky was not legitimate. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, that Putin did. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. Did you yourself not just say a few weeks ago that Zelensky is a dictator and say that Ukraine should have elections, which The Economist is telling us that they're actually preparing for, right? Presuming that there will be a ceasefire or something of the sort, which I very much doubt. I mean, Trump did a week later say, did I say Zelensky was a dictator? Doesn't sound like something I'd say, right? I mean, when he said that, I was like, wow, man, you can't just walk that back. I mean, he's really going, and then the next week he walks it back. And I'm like, what is going on with this guy, right? I mean, and the media just is like, okay, well, we didn't really want him to say that, so we'll just all pretend and nod and agree that he didn't say that because he said he didn't say that. I mean, I don't know that there has ever been an emperor with no clothes whose own people have lied to him, or play along with him so gratuitously as the Western media and other Western governments are now kissing Trump's naked butt. But he is sounding increasingly desperate, right? He's threatening to bomb Iran if they don't agree to a deal with him, after he ripped up the last deal that Iran made with the United States in his first administration, simply because Obama had signed it. And it actually, I mean, by any expert's analysis, it really certainly wasn't a bad deal if the idea was preventing Iran from restarting a nuclear weapons program, which they didn't even have at the time, right? And he then assassinated Iran's top general, the IRGC commander, Qasem Soleimani. And so is it any surprise that the supreme leader of Iran said, it's poisonous to deal with the U.S. It's no point in engaging in diplomacy with them because everything they do, I mean, if it's not ripped up by the same president who signed it, it will be ripped up by the next president who comes in. So now Trump is so furious about that he has sent a huge amount of forces towards Iran, obviously in a threatening way, but he's bombing Yemen. He's facilitating Israel violating the ceasefire that he brokered and bombing Gaza into the dust again, sending ground troops into Gaza again. And, now he's sending bombers to bomb Iran, like no country has ever been bombed before, right? If they don't agree to his deal. That's sounding like a megalomaniac.
Wait, Mark, I'm getting a lot of static. Is that coming from my end or your end?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Do it one more time.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
It just started.
I'm hearing it come back through the computer. So
hearing it when I speak, I'm hearing it on your side. Try it one more time.
He's sounding increasingly like a megalomaniac.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so he's being denied what he wants in multiple places at once, and he's acting like a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. He's not getting his deal in Iran. The Palestinians continue to exist, right? Russia is denying a ceasefire. Zelensky, we've had Ukrainian officials speak openly in the press, and they use the exact same word that I've used to describe Trump's attitude towards Zelensky and the Kiev regime: contemptuous. They hold us in contempt. Yeah, they do. Right. So, I mean, that comes the rationale for this first and second child agreement that Trump is demanding. But I mean, and Europe is defying him now because Europe is blocking this bullshit Black Sea Initiative grain deal 3.0 because Russia, which is saying, look, in the first grain deal, we were promised these conditions and the West never fulfilled them. Sure, we'll go back and do the same thing again, but we actually want those things that you promised for before delivered up front, which includes taking the Russian agricultural bank, putting it back on SWIFT, which includes making sure that Russian fertilizers and grain get to market, to allow Russia to get insurance for these ships London governs most of maritime insurance. Belgium has SWIFT that's based in Brussels. So the Europeans control that as well. All right. Access to ports. Once again, if Russia's bringing its grain into the Meds, we're talking European ports and so on. So Europe basically controls all of the sanctions relief as it's built. And Russia's argument is simple from the beginning, right? If you're saying that all of this is about getting Ukrainian grain to the third world, which needs it, right? Our export of grain is the largest in the world, right? Like considerably larger than Ukraine's. And we're also the biggest exporter of fertilizer. Yet you do all of these things to stop our grain and fertilizer, which is a much bigger share to the world market, right? So if you're really concerned about those poor people in Africa, well, then we better make a deal here on their sakes, and so that they can get both ours and this Kiev regime's grain that you're talking about. But Europe says right out, no, right? Europe does not want a ceasefire. They want the U.S. back to what it was doing or directly involved in war with Russia. And this is now, particularly at the moment, Starmer and Macron, who seem to have taken the lead, while Germany is kind of leaderless in between Scholz and Merz. And they're saying, no, we will not remove these, right? The European Commission, von der Leyen has said it as well. No. So this is Europe now defying Trump and preventing even the hope, the faint hope that a Black Sea ceasefire, might be able to come into force. And the first ceasefire, the Kiev regime, the ceasefire on energy infrastructure, the Kiev regime has violated every single day since it's come into force, which no one can seem even to agree on which day it actually came into force, which is kind of moot because it's never been in force anyway. So the Russian press, the sentiment is Russia is annoyance with the Kremlin right now for even continuing the pretext of it. On the hope of, after 30 days and it expires, saying to Trump, look, we tried, we held it for 30 days. It was your proxies that didn't, which really sounds a little strange, to be perfectly honest, because they are U.S. proxies. In fact, there was supposedly a groundbreaking article in the New York Times. Although anyone who's been paying attention, most of this, 95% of it has actually been admitted to before, but this is compiled together, and it's that the U.S. was more instrumentally involved in the war with the proxy war with Russia, not only more than ever before, more than it was ever technologically possible to puppet another country in history before, because that technology has never existed, right? We had a European official say, oh my God, they are an instrumental part of the kill chain, right? It's not just weapons, right? It's not just financing. It's not just strategy and vice and war gaming. It's literally from the intelligence down to the ground and the battle tablets that were in Ukrainian Kiev regime military's hands, that the U.S. was puppeting them on the battlefield, telling them which hill to go over and which little trench to attack next. That's how involved the U.S. was. It simply wasn't possible to puppet another country before, because the technology didn't exist, right? I mean, there is literally one flimsy degree of separation between the U.S. and the Russian troops that they were killing, and Russia, has if anything not been honest enough about how instrumental the U.S. was in this war, right? At every single conceivable level. And
Well, they can't be.
The whole thing in a bad situation.
If the Russians acknowledge that, they have to do something about it.
Yeah, well, there is that. There is exactly that.
It's like the moment that you make an issue and say, well, the U.S. effectively, we're killing our soldiers. You're stuck
all of Trump's peace initiatives, quote unquote, right, to try to save a U.S. proxy regime here in Ukraine are now dead in the water, right? Whether they're being denied by Russian conditions, the EU refusing to fulfill those conditions, even if Trump agreed to them, and the Kiev regime proxy openly and flagrantly on a daily level violating the ceasefires that have already been agreed to. There are no further plans at this moment for any U.S. and Russian officials to meet, even on a bilateral level, not concerned to the Ukrainian conflict that we know of, because Trump is now, he doesn't know who to threaten and try to put leverage on to get his way next, because everyone is defying him at this point.
Wow. Yeah. You nailed it. You summed it up great. Mark, do you hear an echo coming from me? Just be honest.
No.